j'ai du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Let's turn to the coronavirus pandemic, which clearly continues as the number of confirmed cases here in the United States is now approaching 2 million. The World Health Organization is saying that it had yesterday was the largest single-day rise in coronavirus cases ever. CNN national correspondent Erica Hill has the latest.
This is a triumphant moment for New Yorkers who fought back against this disease. This was the epicenter.
Today, New York City marks a major milestone, phase 1 of reopening. Construction can resume at more than 30,000 sites. There's curbside pickup for retail.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Some 400,000 people expected to be back on the job. Many commuting by train or bus. Subway riders reminded to wear a mask and try to keep their distance. The city also says it will conduct 35,000 tests a day. Overall, New York State and much of the Northeast trending down when it comes to new cases over the past week.
New Yorkers bent the curve by being smart.
The death toll is slowing across the country. Yet in a dozen states, deep red on the map, there is a sharp increase. Overall, new cases are up in 22 states, including Florida, which added more than 1,000 cases a day for 5 straight days last week. Arizona, California, Texas, and Michigan also on the rise. While testing is up, so is the number of people who are out. The TSA screened more than 400,000 people on Friday and Saturday, the most in nearly 3 months.
Where we've seen areas that have significantly increased have been areas that either, one, are very popular for a lot of people to flock to, or areas that opened up very early.
The CDC warning large gatherings, including protests, could put people at risk.
For me, the moment that I chose to protest, I was willing to die for this.
Officials urging protesters to get tested. A third of the new cases in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, announced on Saturday, were traced to one person who attended several beach house gatherings on the New Jersey shore. And at least 6 colleges, including Texas Tech and Auburn, reporting athletes who returned to campus have tested positive. Many were asymptomatic.
How many COVID cases will we accept to have our college football this fall?
Tough questions as Americans decide what they're willing to risk for a return to normal. It has been 100 days here in New York City since the first confirmed case, and an interesting modeling study published today in the journal Nature found that large-scale shutdown measures likely helped to avert 60 million additional infections here in the United States. The lead author from UC Berkeley saying, and I'm quoting him here, "I don't think any human endeavor has ever saved so many lives in such a short period of time," acknowledging the individual sacrifices, going on to say by using science and cooperating, we changed the course of history, Wolf.
Erica Hill, thanks so much for that report. Let's get some more now on the pandemic. I want to bring in our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, there are things that people can do now. They can gather, they can eat at restaurants, they can go out and about. But even if they can, should they?
Well, I think everyone's going to have to evaluate this, based on their own level of risk. I mean, I think that you can reduce the risk to low but not to zero. So I think it's going to depend. I'd say a couple things. One is obvious, if you have symptoms or if you consider yourself someone who is vulnerable, going out and being in a place where the virus is spreading is probably not going to be a good idea. Second is, where are you going? If it's a restaurant, for example, is this a restaurant where you could sit outside? Is it not going to be that crowded? Are they taking this seriously? I think that'd be another consideration. If you're going to go eat with people, have they been taking it seriously? Because are they going to be a potential risk? So we're going to get through this, Wolf, but I think for now you have to think about these things a little bit more strategically, even for what would have otherwise been simple ventures outside.
What kind of advice, Sanjay, do you have for those who feel clearly uneasy about doing things they essentially haven't been doing now for the past 3 months?
I think, the basics, still apply here. And, I always preface by saying we're going to get through this. This isn't going to be forever. But for now, the virus is still circulating. I'd get a good idea if it's circulating pretty aggressively in your community. If it is, I'd have a higher threshold for going out and doing things that aren't essential. If you have any kind of symptoms or if you're vulnerable, again, you should probably stay home for the time being, or at least be very judicious when you go out. But then really be cognizant of your environment. I mean, we know that the virus is spread through respiratory droplets. People around you are wearing a mask. That's obviously going to make it safer. If you're going to go out to eat, Wolf, I think sitting outside, finding a table that's out of the way, not in a high traffic area, making sure it's a restaurant that takes us seriously, I think is going to be important. Again, everyone's going to have their own risk-reward sort of relationship here. For me, I haven't been going out to eat at restaurants right now. I still think the risk is a little too high. I think we will get through this, but I think the numbers still have to trend downward a little bit longer for me.
Yeah, I'm with you, at least for now. Let's hope it gets better in the not-too-distant future. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, as usual, excellent advice. Thanks very much for joining us.
It is Tuesday, the 9th of June of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of smoked hot Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. And I should add also some very lovely lime-soaked roasted corn. Yes, lime juice. Oh, we soak those ears of corn for a long time and then roast them up. Take the kernels off the corn, put them in the chowder, and oh my, is it lovely. Yes, indeed. So, we have the President of the United States perpetuating and furthering conspiracy theories from QAnon. Oh, did you know, just as an aside, because I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but I have to give you the background. Yeah, Trump has been watching OAN all morning, and now he's convinced that the 75-year-old guy who was shoved down by the cops, the Buffalo cops, and then had blood coming out his ears, that he was an Antifa plant going there to, I guess, scan their brain waves. No, he's like scan their police scanners. I have no idea. He was returning a helmet. He had the helmet in his hand, and he wanted to give the helmet to the cops, and they shoved him down because, well, he's in the way. 2 guys in the whole plaza, and they had to shove down that guy. And Trump is out there saying that this guy is an Antifa plant, that it's a setup. What a weirdo. And where did he get this tidbit of information from OAN? Yeah. The reporter works for the Russian propaganda arm and also OAN, One America Network. Okay, that's the President of the United States, leader of the free world. Not for long if we can help it. He will not resign. And we're going to probably have to drag him out of the Oval Office when he loses in November. What's the problem is that we got from November until January. There's a lot of damage that mofo can do, especially with Bill Barr, and Bill Barr ought to be John Mitchell'd. The sooner the better. Now more than ever. Indeed. Wow, it's Watergate all over again, except with Fox News. Everybody's talking about defund the police. I say defund Fox News. Seattle had their first night of no violence. How'd that happen? Well, the mayor lifted the curfew and told the cops to go home. No cops, no violence. Who knew? I know. We have to have cops. Otherwise, they won't protect us. Well, are they now? I want to know how much crime they're really protecting us from when you look at their stats on crime solving. How many rape kits go for 30 years or more without ever being tested? Oh, we didn't know they were there. They got stored wrong. How were we to know? How many murders go unsolved? How many murders go uninvestigated? But they got plenty of time and the biggest budgets in every single one of these municipalities to go out and crack heads when needed. So, defund the police, I say fire every single one. And if there's some that want to come back, then they're going to have to go through a battery of personality tests. And some other measures to determine whether they can be cops or not. And stop calling them a police force. Let's start calling them police services. I'm tired of this force mentality. Let us not hire warriors anymore in the police. Maybe we need to hire some social workers. Or maybe as part of the prerequisite of becoming a cop, when you go to college to become a cop, and that's what you're going to have to do from now on. No more high school dropouts getting into the police department. You finish out your 4-year college undergrad degree in police science, and you take social work classes. As a start, I would also make them go through a whole battery of humanities. But I'm a romantic at heart. Indeed. Well, the right-wing propaganda continues here in small-town America. They were getting all sorts of weird sharing things from other parts of the country of Antifa coming with car trunk loads of, looks like water. Looks like milk to pour on people for tear gas. And I don't know, there was some like canisters of cooking, propane for the Coleman stove the guy had in his back trunk, or the back of his station wagon SUV type thing. And this is supposed to be evidence of Antifa coming to destroy America, I guess. I'm still trying to figure that out. But this is making the rounds. It's racist propaganda, of course. And we have plenty of those here in Rogue River. Oh, and I'll tell you, the racists are the first ones to let you know they aren't racist, and they get really pissed off about it, too. Really. That's how you can tell they're racist. And, but I will say, they've pretty much played their string out here, even in this town. The more sensible heads, the more reasonable heads are now speaking up. Before, they were hunkered down because the loudmouths also made it very clear they had guns and they were not afraid to use them. I was threatened many, many times just last summer after my son died. And I mentioned it. I was threatened with physical violence by Proud Boys. We're going to come and kick your ass. Yeah, well, try. No, I didn't say that because I was just instigates them. But I will say I've been a bouncer, and there's ways of de-escalating a situation without resorting to violence. But I've only had to pop 2 guys in all the times. In all the years, I only had to pop 2, and it didn't go well for them. I don't like to pop people. First of all, when you pop them, sometimes you hurt your own hand. And I like to play guitar. So I try to avoid popping people, and always had. Usually could de-escalate by just the power of my voice, and maybe my personality. Why would I want to escalate something into a fight when there is, well, business to be had? Fights interfere with business. That's why you work as a bouncer. Jeez. Anyway, Proud Boys threatening me with physical violence, because I dared call fascism what it is. They defended fascism constantly. And somehow, I got people coming out, oh, this is the reason no one likes you here in town. Well, actually, a lot of people in town like me, but they were afraid to speak up because the loudmouth Trump brats have the guns and they're not afraid to tell you about it. Well, something turned. Maybe it was George Floyd pleading for his life in the last moments before he floated off into eternity. He was calling his mother's name. In the delirium between living and dead, when the brain is trying to hold on to some semblance of order that we call life, he envisioned his mother, his late mother. And America heard that. And now America is pissed. It is enough. When you see the thousands of people marching, yeah, that's Antifa. That's some sort of Tea Party AstroTurf thing? No. The only people who AstroTurf are you-know-who. So it's no surprise that everything that they do, they will accuse us of. Right down to accusing a 75-year-old guy who is part of the Catholic worker. He is a man of God. And I think of Trump and Melania in that memorial for Pope John Paul II, a Catholic memorial. And now Trump is saying that this guy is an Antifa plant. It was all a setup to make the cops look bad. What an idiot. And they wanted to get rid of Obama because he wore a tan suit. Jesus. I am so over these people. Oh my, look at the time. It's just burning up. Well, I got to tell you, this whole administration is emblematic of everything burning up. Let's put out the fire. What's on the rest of the menu? Well, have we forgotten that we're in a pandemic? I hope not, because as states lift more restrictions and more Americans go out to socialize or protest, 22 U.S. states are seeing higher rates of new coronavirus cases. In fact, in the weather report, we'll speak about another jump in confirmed cases here in our small little county of Jackson in southern Oregon. Then we're going to go into the Bistro Cafe, because that's where we are. And Pompeo and Barr refuse to answer to Congress, and the Senate GOP is letting them get away with it. The U.S. women's soccer team wants the U.S. Soccer Federation to repeal its National Anthem policy, where they can't kneel, and also issue apologies to the league's black players. No, I don't think so. They're going to call in the cops probably now. And New York is poised to open police disciplinary files that have been off limits since the early 70s. Yeah, apparently if you made public a cop's disciplinary record, it was apparently, according to defense attorneys back in the day, it would harm their livelihood. Well, damn right it would. That's what it's supposed to do. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where international viewers refute the myth that black U.S. movies and television are poor exports. Because apparently the international audience wants more, and they can't get enough of it. And troop reductions in Germany threatens both NATO and U.S. security. Feature, not a bug. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And please do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. I know times are tough, and they have gotten even tougher for us. Bills continue to go up. And our, I'll be honest with you, our recurring contributions have gone down, and understandably so. But if you could afford a espresso-type coffee drink sent to us once a month, the cost of that, if you could send those funds. Remember when we could go get an espresso? God, it was so fun. Anyway, if you could send the cost of that to us, we are able to stretch those dollars, and we we couple it up with what comes out of our own wallets, and we are able to pay our bills. And we have found, at least I have, that if you pay your bills, sometimes you can slip under the radar and, exercise your free speech. Otherwise, you might get caught up in some sort of collection. And you don't want that. No. Anyway, thank you for your generosity over these almost 10 years now of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance radio broadcasting. We would truly be unable to do it without you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of at Justice Putnam, so go ahead, follow me there, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime and link that up on social media, of which Twitter is one part. Interesting, eh? Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And probably the most important part of this whole spiel, outside of asking for money, is pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, we better dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It is by Dan Desai Martin, and though it is primarily about Pompeo, I did add Barr in there, because he just this morning, his people said, Bill Barr will not be testifying in front of Congress. And I'm wondering, why aren't these people being, why are not subpoenas being issued? Why are they not being escorted by some sort of police personnel to testify? Okay. On Friday, Senator Jim Risch, Republican of Idaho, chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, announced that he is giving up efforts to push Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to testify at a routine hearing on his department's budget. You know, congressional oversight. Congress controls the purse strings. And the executive is saying, we don't need no freaking oversight. Freaking. The committee had been working for the past 4 months to get Pompeo to testify on the 2021 budget. During such hearings with cabinet officials on their respective departments, they are often asked about a wide range of issues in addition to budgets. How about defunding the State Department until Pompeo testifies? Please. In a call with other GOP members of the committee, a Risch staffer said he was focused on preserving political capital with the administration. Who cares about political capital with the administration? You're supposed to have oversight on the administration, not establishing political capital. But it's just me. The last time Pompeo testified before the committee was in April of 2019. The recent firing of State Department Inspector General Steve Linick would likely be a subject about which Pompeo would be asked. Trump fired Linick on May 15th at Pompeo's request because Linick was looking into Pompeo's crimes. Since the firing, Linick has told members of the House of Representatives that officials in the department attempted to bully him into dropping investigations, including one related to U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia, in which Pompeo was involved. On the 21st of May, several House leaders sent a letter to Pompeo requesting more information about Linux firing, noting that this assault on the integrity and independence of inspectors general appears to be an intentional campaign to undermine their ability to expose corruption and protect taxpayer dollars from waste, fraud, and abuse. And Pompeo's silence and not responding to the letters speaks volumes about his interest in avoiding corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse. Why? Because Pompeo's tenure as head of the State Department has been plagued by controversy. In March, he repeatedly used racist terminology to refer to the coronavirus, including demanding that a G7 statement about the pandemic call it the Wuhan virus before he'd sign it. Then in January, Trump retaliated against NPR after one of his reporters, Mary Louise Kelly, asked why he had not stood up for the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, when the Trump administration was pushing her out of her post for political reasons. Afterward, Kelly later said Pompeo shouted at her using expletives and asked if she could find Ukraine on the map. And you know what? He couldn't find Ukraine on the map. During the impeachment inquiry into Trump, Pompeo said he had not been on the call Trump made on July 25th to Ukrainian President Zelensky, during which he asked Zelensky to announce an investigation into Joe Biden and Biden's son Hunter. Pompeo later admitted that he had been on the call because, we have intelligence services that monitor these things. Pompeo's refusal to be held accountable is in stark contrast to his demands for accountability of the Obama administration when he was a member of Congress, especially regarding the 2012 Benghazi attack that was made into a weird conspiracy by the right wing, because that's what they are all about. Throw away the truth. Find out why those embassies and consulates were attacked. Oh, I know why. The Republicans took away the budgets. And they were warned that would happen. And when it happened, they blamed Hillary. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The U.S. women's national team wants the U.S. Soccer Federation to repeal the anthem policy it instituted after Megan Rapinoe started kneeling during the Star-Spangled Banner. Oh, say, can you see? The U.S. women's team also wants the Federation to state publicly that the policy was wrong and issue an apology to the team's black players and supporters. And actually, they should through the whole league. Further, we believe the Federation should lay out its plans on how it will now support the message and movement that it tried to silence 4 years ago, the U.S. women's team said in a statement posted on the Twitter feed of its player association last night, Monday. Rapinoe took a knee during the anthem at a pair of national team matches in 2016. She said she wanted to express solidarity with San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who silently took a knee during the national anthem before NFL games to raise awareness of police brutality and racial justice, and for that, he was blacklisted, has not been able to get a job in his field, even though he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. The U.S. Soccer Federation then approved a policy in February of 2017 that stated players shall stand respectfully during national anthems. The policy remains in place, though the unions for the men's and women's team believe it doesn't apply to their players because of their collective bargaining agreements. Rapinoe and Kaepernick each face sharp criticism for the protest for years, but public sentiment has changed since George Floyd's death last month. A lawyer for the men's union also called for the repeal of the policy, and an apology in a statement provided to BuzzFeed News, which was the first to report on the women's statement. A message was left by AP seeking comment from the Federation, and the AP has not heard back. Marina Villeneuve of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A decades-old law that kept law enforcement officers' disciplinary records secret in New York appeared to be headed for an overhaul this week as state lawmakers moved to act on a number of police accountability measures prompted by street demonstrations over the death of George Floyd. The state law, known by its section title 50-A, was passed in the 70s to prevent criminal defense attorneys from subjecting officers to cross-examinations about irrelevant information in their personnel file. The law also applies to jail guards and firefighters as well. But over the years, the law also draped a veil over most records of alleged police misconduct. Formal complaints about excessive force by officers are not public in New York. In recent years, police departments have cited the law in refusing to say even whether officers have been punished. The Democrat-led, I think it should be Democratic-led legislature planned to pass a repeal this week, and Governor Andrew Cuomo said he intends to sign it, noting that such records are already available for other government employees, such as teachers and bridge toll takers. Wow. Their records will be available, Cuomo said. It is just parity and equality with every other public employee. The leaders of a coalition of police unions argued in a statement that releasing such records, including complaints, could leave officers facing, quote, unavoidable and irreparable harm to reputation and livelihood. Well, damn right it should be. What are these people complaining about? That's the whole point. Jeez. The legislation would provide officers with some privacy protections, including redaction of home addresses, personal phone numbers, and email addresses. Well, that should go without saying, shouldn't it? The legislation was among a package of police accountability bills that began to move through the legislature yesterday, Monday, and some of which were passed. The Senate, the state Senate and Assembly passed legislation that bans police chokeholds, guarantees the right to record police activity, and collects more data on deaths in custody. Well, I guess the union's going to be fighting all of that, too. Can we get rid of these unions? The AFL-CIO can do that, you know. They better. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. There's a lot of cash crawling on the seafloor. American lobsters bring in more money than any other U.S. fishery. A record $670 million in 2016, mostly through Maine and Massachusetts. The fishery relies on traditional lobster harvest techniques. A series of traps is dropped to the ocean floor with a long rope attached to a floating buoy.
During peak fishing season, there's over 900,000 vertical lines right in the middle of right whale habitat.
Graduate student Hannah Myers from the University of Alaska Fairbanks College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences. Those vertical lines entangle and kill endangered sea turtles and multiple whale species, including the North Atlantic right whales. Only about 400 individuals remain, and recent analyses show that the species won't survive if humans kill an average of just one whale each year. Some estimates indicate that lobstering gear kills more than 3 whales each year on average.
Management problems surrounding the North Atlantic right whale and entanglements are pretty significant and have been really challenging to move forward, and a large part of that is due to expected negative economic impact in the lobster fishery.
But right whale protections don't have to mean lobster losses. Canada's lobster harvest operates with fewer traps and a shorter 6-month-long season.
The U.S. lobster fishery in Maine expends approximately 7.5 times as much as the Canadian fishery to catch the same amount, and Canadians are catching almost 4 times more lobster per trap.
They're putting less effort into it and spending less on fuel and equipment, but they're still gathering nearly the same amount of lobster overall. And there are stateside examples.
In Massachusetts, areas that have had a seasonal closure in recent years have reached record high landings.
The study was published in the journal Marine Policy. Restrictions could actually mean a healthier lobster population overall.
It's paradoxical, but it is consistent with a lot of fisheries research that shows that when you fish with too much effort and too many traps in the water, the stock itself isn't as robust. So one thing we might expect is that you would either have, more or larger lobsters if there are fewer traps in the water coming into each trap, and therefore be able to haul up more lobster per trap. And that's kind of what we see on the Canadian side.
Taking some of those ropes out of the water could benefit both the whales and the fishery.
Our main takeaway is that a negative economic impact should not be assumed with effort reduction in the U.S. lobster fishery.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Persuaded that his election would help cement support for the new government, George Washington reluctantly agreed to serve as the nation's first president. He likened his feelings on once again taking up the burdens of public service to those of a culprit who is going to the place of his execution. Washington was inaugurated first president of the United States on April 30th, 1789. He served 2 terms, guiding the new government through the organization of the executive branch, founding the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., opening the West for settlement, and establishing precedents that have influenced the conduct of succeeding presidents ever since. Constitutions do not become real without the institutions necessary to implement them. It fell primarily to Washington to give flesh and blood to the executive branch and the national government generally during the first critical years. That's all for today's podcast. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1954. That was the day that marked the public downfall of Wisconsin Senator Joseph McCarthy. Senator McCarthy had become the public face of anti-communist hysteria during the Cold War. He used his position as senator to make wild accusations against alleged communists in the U.S. government. He ruined careers and ramped up public fears of a menacing communist threat. Public officials, labor leaders, university presidents, and Hollywood stars and directors all became potential targets of the Red Scare. The hysteria took a particular toll on the labor movement. In 1946, Congress overrode President Harry Truman's veto and passed the Taft-Hartley Act. The act required that all union leaders sign an affidavit that they were not communists. Those with ties to the Communist Party, or those who simply refused to sign the loyalty pledge on principle, faced expulsion from the labor movement. The communist purges ripped the labor movement apart, expelling some of the most progressive and radical leaders. Senator McCarthy was the public face of the anti-red witch hunts, but some in the public began to question his bullying tactics. Then the senator made an unfounded claim that the army had been infiltrated by communists. For 2 months, the American public watched as Senator McCarthy conducted televised hearings into the United States Army. Joseph Welch served as the chief legal counsel for the Army. Senator McCarthy accused another lawyer of Welch's firm of having communist ties. Angered, Welch asked,
"Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?"
Many in the public watched the testimony and wondered the same thing. McCarthy's popularity and power was finally checked.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
2 weeks after his death at the hands of Minneapolis police officers, George Floyd is being laid to rest Tuesday in his hometown of Houston. Expect day-long coverage of the funeral to dominate the airwaves. As protests continued nationwide over police brutality against African Americans, House Democrats on Monday unveiled their new police reform proposal. The Justice in Policing Act would limit legal protections for police, create a national database of excessive force encounters, ban police chokeholds and no-knock warrants, mandate the use of body cams on police officers nationwide, and ban military-style weapons for officers, among other changes. Activists and critics of our current system of law enforcement have embraced the idea of defunding the police, a terrible slogan for necessary action. Advocates will tell you that defund the police is shorthand for divesting money from local and state police budgets and reinvesting it in communities' mental health services and social service programs. Supporters say it's a symbolic commitment to end systemic racism and shift policing priorities, rather than an actual plan to eliminate law enforcement agencies. But Republicans are seizing on the phrase to suggest that the left is soft on crime. Joe Biden pushing back on both ideas Monday, telling CBS News,
"No, I don't support defunding the police. I support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet certain basic standards of decency and honorableness and, in fact, are able to demonstrate they can protect the community and everybody in the community."
But Trump's senior advisor for strategic planning, one Jared Kushner, said Monday during a White House roundtable discussion with law enforcement representatives that there had been a problem with injustice, but systemic racism and police brutality, well, they've been fixed.
The law enforcement community heard the cries from the community, saw the injustices in the system that needed to be fixed, and they responded by coming together to fix it, and it's been a great partnership to do that. Those reforms make our communities safer and have made our system fairer, and that's the type of action that we've been able to accomplish by working together. So what we've seen in the past is that the meetings together and the work together doesn't just result in reports and in nice talking points. It actually results in progress and actual policies that make people's lives better and make communities safer. So it's an honor to work together, and hopefully at this time where there's a lot of people in the country who are feeling different pain and feeling different concerns, law enforcement can be a leader in coming together and helping us work towards bringing solutions that could bring this country forward.
A new Washington Post poll finds that Americans overwhelmingly support the nationwide protests that have taken place since the killing of George Floyd at the hands of police in Minneapolis. And they also say police forces have not done enough to ensure blacks are treated equally to whites. Donald Trump receiving negative marks for his handling of the protests, with 61% saying they disapprove, 35% saying they approve. Much of the opposition to Trump is vehement, with 47% of Americans saying they strongly disapprove of the way the president has responded to the protests. Well, so much for Trump's great economy. The recession started before the pandemic shut everything down. The National Bureau of Economic Research's Business Cycle Dating Committee announced Monday that the U.S. economy in February slipped into a recession for the first time since 2009. While some people try to paint the stay-at-home orders as less than productive, a new study published Monday in the journal Nature said that those orders prevented about 60 million infections across the United States and another 285 million in China. A separate study from epidemiologists at Imperial College London estimated that stay-at-home orders prevented about 3.1 million deaths in 11 European countries and reduced infection rates by 82%. But as U.S. businesses reopen, 14 states recorded their highest ever 7-day average of new cases at the start of June. The hardest hit states are Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Florida, Kentucky, New Mexico, North Carolina, Mississippi, Oregon, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah. And Puerto Rico has also recorded its highest ever weekly average. Florida alone has seen a 46% increase in cases over the last week. As of Tuesday morning, the U.S. has reported over 1,960,000 cases of the coronavirus and more than 111,000 deaths as a result. And here's something that'll make those numbers rise even faster. The Trump campaign is planning to resume holding their trademark rallies in the next 2 weeks as states push forward with reopenings. And finally, don't forget, the best way to make an impact is at the ballot box. Tuesday is primary day in Georgia, Nevada, South Carolina, West Virginia, and North Dakota. Vote. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the low 80s. Looks like winds will be light and variable this morning, picking up out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour in just a couple of hours. Cloudy skies early, then partly cloudy this afternoon, with mainly clear skies tonight, lows in the mid-50s, and winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour tomorrow. Mostly sunny skies, highs in the low to mid-80s, with winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County of Southern Oregon have increased to 71 from yesterday's high of 69. Slowly, inexorably, every state is seeing more and more coronavirus. Grass pollen right outside the mothership is rated very high. The air quality index in the Southern Oregon region is good at 19 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at 9. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.22 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 62%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 65 and fair with coronavirus, sadly. Paris is 64 and mostly cloudy with mostly quite a bit of coronavirus. Rome is 71 and partly cloudy, seeing another surge in coronavirus. Kyiv is 86 and fair, and we're not getting a whole lot of accurate numbers about coronavirus. Kabul is 78 and mostly cloudy with coronavirus. Hong Kong is 80 and mostly cloudy, and they have coronavirus, along with the democracy movement. Well, let's see. Tokyo is 75 and partly cloudy, and they're trying to open up their country, but they have coronavirus. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees with a rain shower, and they're not going to allow foreign visitors to come to Australia because they have a spike in coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 57 degrees and sunny, and they're trying to come out of the lockdown, but they're getting a spike in coronavirus. And New York is 80 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny, with coronavirus, and civil unrest that is our constitutionally guaranteed right. So that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Lynn Elber of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. To entice a European TV executive shopping for programs, ABC Studios offered up glossy fare including Scandal, starring Kerry Washington, and How to Get Away with Murder with Oscar winner Viola Davis. This is great. But when are you going to start bringing us shows that don't have black leads, the buyer asked in the 2015 meeting, as then ABC executive Channing Dungey recounts. I was sitting in a room in the 21st century, and I thought I was being slapped across the face, she said. The buyer's remark was unusually blunt, but the attitude is a familiar one within Hollywood's own ranks.
African-American actors and stories make for poor exports, a stubborn assertion that's burdened black artists and limited their opportunity and influence. Well, until now. As box office hits including Black Panther and the ethnically inclusive Fast and Furious franchise increasingly undercut what filmmaker Ava DuVernay calls a long-standing myth, they've been joined by a new generation of small screen fare also finding international success. It's an issue with marked resonance as Americans' torment over the videotaped death of a black man in police custody is reflected in demonstrations held far outside the U.S. borders. Protesters carrying "We Are All George Floyd" and Black Lives Matter placards have gathered in cities including Montreal, London, Paris, Rio de Janeiro, and Auckland, demanding attention to inequities worldwide. Dungy, who at ABC became the first African-American to head a major broadcast network, is now Netflix's vice president for original series. And she says diversity's appeal is proven by the streaming service's globally distributed programs and closely held viewership figures provided to the AP. Racial discrimination and injustice are themes of some, but not all of the Netflix projects that have drawn far-flung viewers. The characters tend to be African-American, created by the black writers, directors, and stars, whose progress in the U.S. entertainment industry has outpaced that of Latinos, Asian Americans, and other people of color.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
David Rising and Zeke Miller of the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Germany's defense minister suggested that Trump's reported plans to withdraw more than a quarter of American troops out of Germany could weaken not only the NATO alliance, but the U.S. itself. Trump is said to have signed off on a plan to reduce the total of troops stationed in Germany from 34,500 to no more than 25,000. That's 34,500. Down to 25,000, according to reports by the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. But Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer told reporters that Berlin has not yet been informed of any such move. A White House official, speaking on condition that no one name them because they're afraid of Trump, to discuss internal matters, confirmed to the AP that there are plans to move troops, saying some could go to Poland, while others could go elsewhere. They just have to find out from Vlad where. The decision is part of Trump's and the Department of Defense efforts to review combatant commands around the globe because they've been in conference with Vlad. It is if the U.S. goes ahead, Kramp-Karrenbauer suggested, the move would do more harm to NATO as a whole than to Germany's own defense. The fact is that the presence of U.S. soldiers in Germany serves the entire NATO alliance security, including America's own security, she said. That is the basis on which we work together. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.